Ahoy! The New World devs leaked something very interesting in yesterday's video. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but either way it was discovered by JOddity, and that is a rested XP bar on a level 60 character. In case you're unaware, that shouldn't be there. Normally you just have a black bar towards the bottom because there is no XP progress at level 60 anymore, so no rested XP bar is necessary. What JOddity speculated because of that is that there will likely be a level increase. In this video I want to talk about some other factors that may play into this and also about the potential implications of this. First of all, how likely is it that this bar actually indicates a level increase that we'll be seeing in the expansion? I personally believe that it is fairly likely. This is obviously recorded on some internal testing environment, and it is possible that they're just trying to test out higher levels and see what would happen if they implemented higher levels, but why would they be doing that right now before the expansion if it wasn't something they're planning to do in the expansion? I'm fairly certain that while they have different teams working on different things, right now most of their focus will be on things related to the expansion to make sure everything is working smoothly before it hits PTR soon. And they wouldn't really throw entirely unrelated things in the same test environment as the test environment they would use for Transmog. Now, I don't think the level increase is coming with Transmog, just to be clear. I think it's coming with the expansion. But I think whatever test environment they're using here is running on around expansion level-ish. We also already know that the gear score system is getting some degree of overhaul and that our current gear will no longer be upgradable or useful in the expansion. It will be obsolete. We also have some hints that this will likely coincide with the Ward and Bane removal and possibly a Resilient removal as well. Now, when we had our first gear score increase from 600 to 625, that coincided with the introduction of mutations, with the Umbral Shard system, and in many ways it was more of a gap filler, I feel. It was something that gave people something to do, gave people something to grind towards, and it wasn't really so much about adding much content beyond the mutation levels for existing expeditions. That also resulted in you being able to upgrade your existing gear, even though at the time 600 gear score was still a lot harder to achieve. It wasn't nearly as common, so a lot of gear kind of became obsolete at the time as well if it was below 590. Then when Brimstone Sands came out, there weren't any further gear score increases. Instead, we got the new region and we got hard runes. In one of the Q&As back then, the devs actually talked about hard runes and the horizontal progression that they did with Brimstone Sands. They said that the time didn't feel right for another gear score increase and that they wanted to do this horizontal stuff instead and then would do an increase when it felt appropriate, when there was a change of a large enough scale to warrant it. They also specifically did not label Brimstone Sands as an expansion. It was an addition of content to the game, but as far as I'm aware they didn't brand it as an expansion anywhere, at least not consistently like they are with this upcoming update. Since the gear score increase itself is already confirmed, and it's already confirmed that our current gear will be obsolete, which is beyond the scale of what they did when they introduced mutations, it does sound to me like they're saying very much that this is the big update. This is the big expansion where they're doing big changes, and that includes a significant increase to gear score. And I would think that makes it fairly likely in itself that a level increase could be part of that as well. Ironically, at the end of the day, I don't even think that it makes that much of a difference if it's a level increase or not, other than you having a few levels to grind. Because keep in mind, if you're getting higher level gear anyways, higher level gear score, then you're gonna get more attributes anyways, and that's the same thing leveling does, you're just getting a few extra points here and there. I don't know what gear score we're going to go to, because I've seen the number 700 float around a lot, but I don't think that's been anything that's been confirmed anywhere, it's just speculation. And realistically, since they're doing some form of overhaul, they could reset the entire progression. For example, they could say that now level 60 is 60 gear score instead, and then whatever level is the new max level is the highest gear score you can reach, or slightly above that. So the default gear score for a level 60 could be just 60 gear score. But again, this could be anything, this could be going in any direction, we just need some hypothetical numbers here. So let's say the new max level is 65 and the new max gear score is 700, for example. Could be level 70, could be 800 gear score, who knows, but let's say 65, 700, so we have some numbers. What would be the difference if we just did 700 gear score without the level increase? A few attribute points from the levels themselves, and no XP bar that you need to grind up. But people like progression. It feels nice to level up. It feels nice to feel like you achieved something new, you reached a new milestone of some degree. And for that, levels are just one of the easiest indicators that have worked in games for ages. Due to the way that the weapon mastery system in New World works, this doesn't necessarily imply that you get more points to spend there, though it could. They could also increase the levels for those, and you could progress your weapons past level 20. But my point is that in many ways a level increase would maybe be more of a feel-good factor rather than something that drastically makes a difference compared to a pure gear score increase. But there's another indication that I believe somewhat ties into this. I've talked about this before, but I want to bring it in this context as well because I think it's probably related. And that's the new resources that we're getting that provide us with extra XP when refined. So for example, in case of skinning, that's the strange bones, abnormal bones, and unusual bones. The highest tier for all of these resources and the research nodes that are tied to them is rare, it's blue. And that doesn't make sense considering the other materials dropped from the same mobs are purple rarity. Based on that, I believe it's very likely that we're getting a new trade skill tier in the expansion, which would be the one that would be providing us with a purple form of research node. And if we are getting a new gathering tier, then that would very likely be tied to a new crafting tier as well. And that would very likely be tied to a new level of gear that you can craft. So for example, something above Orichalcum weapons. I feel like this hint and the level increase hint also kind of reinforce each other. If we get a level increase but everyone is still running around in Shadewalker, that would look kind of weird and feel kind of weird. That would not really be an expansion feel, even though obviously with Transmog you wouldn't see much of the Shadewalker anymore. The trade skill increase happening without a level increase and just with the gear score increase would obviously be possible as well, but I feel like both of them being teased or accidentally shown together makes it more likely for both to coexist and for there just being a general big step forward in progression for everything in the game. And that begs another question. What about the content? So far, all that's been confirmed is a zone transformed and a new expedition. Nothing beyond that. We've seen glimpses into other zones, but that was prior to this expansion even being announced, and that's just stuff that's always been in the game basically. So that doesn't necessarily indicate that there will necessarily be more new zones. So assuming we are just getting this one zone transformed into the new max level zone, then what happens to the rest of the content? One thing that other games do that would obviously be an option is just having mobs in general scale with your level, no matter what zone you go into. That I think is something that adds an interesting challenge to the world overall and also makes open world PvP somewhat more interesting sometimes, but also sometimes more annoying. But I don't know if that's the route they are planning to take. But what we do know is that there's still the mutation rework that has been lingering forever and ever and that they kind of just went radio silent on after a while. It was announced, I think, last year initially, or at least early this year, and they were planning to do it for ages, but then it never happened. We never saw anything about it. And that could be a possible angle that they're taking with the content. The current expeditions are all scaled to level 60, so if they do a level increase, those will not really have any purpose anymore. They will be very easy at least. I'm sure the devs are aware that a single expedition and a single new zone aren't gonna keep people busy for long, and if they do a large-scale expansion, there needs to be something beyond that. And if they do a mutator overhaul of a larger scale with this expansion that actually makes mutators more interesting, maybe more challenging, gives us a reason to play them, and also do something about the rewards from mutations, which they kind of talked about in a previous dev talk, then there could be a pathway to some late game PvE content here. They did say that they want specific loot from specific places so you know where to go to get something in particular that you need, so I could see challenging mutations scaled up to the new max level max gear score being an option for that. On the PvP side of things, you wouldn't really have to do the same amount of adjustments with a level increase, because if everyone is the new max level, then you automatically have your different challenge from that anyways. The only things that may need to be adjusted in that regard are minor stuff like mobs in Outpost Rush because they're PvE, and siege weaponry, which is mostly underwhelming either way, so that could use a buff, regardless of level increase or not. That of course doesn't cover the PvP content that we may or may not be getting in the expansion. What we have confirmed so far is the territory influence race updates. Beyond that, we don't know anymore, we'll have to wait and see. So far, again, there hasn't really been much communication about what exactly will be in the expansion, what we can expect, and we kind of just have to piece it all together bit by bit. Once we discover anything new or find out more, I will of course let you know, so consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you're gonna get notified of that. Again, credits to JOddity for originally making this discovery. I will link his video in the description down below. If you want to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. Thanks to all my patrons who already do exactly that. And thank you for watching. Dukesloth, out.